And we are live with today's N10-009 Network Plus Study Group. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. It is 10 minutes to go. You can see our clock says that it is 10 minutes before the top of the hour. At the top of the hour, we will be starting this study group. In the meantime, this is the pre-show where I say hello to the chat room. Hi, chat room. And I'm checking on stream data. We're checking our data rates. We're looking at cameras, which look good. We are recording down here. We're in pretty good shape. That'll give me something different that I have to fix later, I guess, because I can't figure out what's wrong now. There's always something wrong, right? I have a great story about things going wrong because my house lost power a couple of days ago, and an interesting thing happened that required me to completely change my wireless network configuration. So there's your hook for the second hour. We'll talk about that in the after show. Such interesting things going on. Okay, we are in pretty good shape here. Audio looks good. These things are fine. What else is going on? Hope everybody's doing well. We are finishing up our live streams for the month. This is our next to last. Next week is our Security Plus live stream. Haven't even written those questions yet. We got to get to that. That's an important thing. We've been spending our time doing a lot of editing lately. You may have noticed on our YouTube channel that we probably posted 20 or so videos in the last week or so, maybe just under that, somewhere around there. And I have another, 20 or so to go. So I got to work on that. That's always fun. And by fun, I mean not fun. A lot of editing. The editing that I do is relatively boring because it's really just me talking, bop, 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 and then I'll say something wrong, and I cut that out, and we go the next take. And that's it. There's not a lot of animation. There's no shaking of the screen. There's no graphics pointing at stuff. It's very straightforward, which means it is very boring when you're doing it. Let's see if I can get my cables straightened out over here. This is why we have a pre-show, so we make sure everything's working. Air conditioning is on. There was some lawn work going on outside, which I was thinking as we were going live, that's perfect for a live stream, but I think they're done. I think they've wandered off. So that means we can have our live stream in silence, in quietness, in an optimal audio environment. Well, or as optimal as I can get it. This is as optimal as we're going to have today. There are things I could do to enhance the audio environment. I've been doing some of that. At the beginning of the year, we swapped out for our newer audio. This is our newer audio config, audio chain. So we got a new mixer. It's kind of nice. It's certainly got pretty colors. I don't know if I really am into the colors, but there they are. And but you can turn them down, which I've done or tried to do. So that makes it a little bit better when you're working with it. I suppose it's supposed to be visually eye-catching with all the pretty colors, and I guess it is. It's an interesting choice in mixers. The problem is that mixers are becoming much more software devices, and that's really what this is. It's one big software device. And the colors are there, I think, they do prompt, and there are places where they reference that in the software. It's well integrated. It's just one of those scenarios where you're really trying to make this work professionally, but there's pretty colors. So it's an interesting contrast between I need grays and blacks and whites and beiges. I don't need yellow and green and blue, but there it is. So I guess you can take it as a bonus. It's a bonus, everybody. Hello, chat room. Hope everybody's doing well. Folks are checking in now. We got folks checking in from, more Florida people. They're in Fort Myers. Some folks in the UK. Nice to have you here. Do I trust my ISP to give me constant connection during the live stream? Well, the number one rule is you never trust your ISP. So no, of course, I don't trust anyone to give me a constant connection during the live stream, but they've been very good traditionally. We do about 4 or 5 live streams a month. I do numerous meetings when I'm not live. I'll go on a Zoom call, or I'll watch a Zoom meeting and participate. And my ISP has been relatively solid. My config right now is 2 gig up and 2 gig down. So I have lots of bandwidth. Response time has been very good. There have been numerous problems we've run into from time to time. There was an enormous problem I had earlier in the year, maybe end of last year, where there was a routing loop in Miami that wasn't here. It wasn't at my house. It wasn't even in my neighborhood. It wasn't even in my city. I'm in Central Florida, but I clearly saw the routing loop in my trace route. I watch it happen, and every 40 seconds it would loop. It would disconnect for about 3.5 seconds, 4 seconds, and then go back to working. And you try to open a ticket with your ISP telling them that they have a router loop. They don't know what to do with you. They're like, have you unplugged everything and plugged it back in? Have you rebooted everything? We're able to ping you just fine. Like, yes, but your connection to the internet is broken. And they said, well, we don't know what to do with that. We'll roll a truck to your house. He'll be there next week. Like, well, that's great. But when he gets here, he won't be able to fix it because the problem's in Miami. And they just couldn't figure out how I could tell the problem was in Miami, and they wouldn't take the ticket and move it up. They would not provide the ticket to someone else who understood the topic. And afterwards, once they finally figured it out, it took days, over a weekend. And finally, I got to talk with some folks that were there. And that was very nice. Once I finally got the right people on the phone, we had a good conversation. But they were really angry with me for talking to them and saying, well, you can roll a truck, but it's not going to fix it. And they weren't really happy with my analysis. I was really trying to be quite polite. I understand they can't see this and they don't know what a router loop is. And they don't, there's a lot of things that surround this that I wasn't expecting them to, but I just needed them to move the ticket up the line. Just move it to go to the tier 2, go to tier 3. But they just wouldn't. There was not a method in place for them to be able to do that. I'm with a relatively small ISP. So because of that, they don't have a lot of the processes and procedures in place that a number of the larger ISPs have. So that was the problem we ran into. But once I talked to the person who was there, it was very nice. We had it down, and we had a nice conversation. Now I know who to call. Now I know who to talk to. Oh, I should probably put up the URL if you wanted to put your digital push pin into our map. Got a number of people that have checked in from the U.S. We got folks in the Europe area, European Union. Looks like we got some folks that are in Ireland. Don't see you UK people up there yet. Got some folks in the middle of the ocean. Must be on some type of island that's not listed directly on here. Yeah, I'll just tell them who I was. That means negative. They don't you know who I am? They're like, no, we don't really care who you are. Like, that's right. This is exactly how it works at my house too. That's how things work at home. The don't you know who I am card does not exist in my world. So that's the way that works. But that's okay. We figured it out. It worked all right. We got it up and running, and things have been pretty solid since then. I don't know that if I ran into the same type of problem, that would be good. Hey, Malk, good to see you. Malk has checked in the chat. We now know that folks are still there in the Leeward Islands. I guess, is it a Leeward Island? I think we had this conversation, didn't we? It's one of those situations. Wow. I like messages that start with wow. That's always good too. Well, and they're now, oh, we missed it. Now it's gone. That's sad. Let's see what we can do now because it's top of the hour. We saw the 12 o'clock show up. Let's now do a keynote. Let's get a green light. That's a green light. Let's get rid of this on the screen. Let's do a live stream, everybody. Here we go. Let's get things started with that right there. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the June 2025 Professor Messer N10-009 Network Plus Study Group. This is the Network Plus Study Group where I will ask you questions that come directly from the official CompTIA exam objectives. We get to see just how well you know some of that content. We've got all new questions for you today, except for the first one, as usual. We have performance-based questions. I will take your questions at the end of the hour. We have a lot to go through today. And if you are here live, you can participate interactively on the World Wide Web. The way you would do that is to go to this link that we have right here. This is the link that provides you with connection to the Q&A. It is professormesser.com/Q&A. That is all you need to be able to answer the questions that we have today. In fact, we will be able to test this question right now because I have for you a question that we did last month, and we'll see how well you remember the question, and then we will see if you're able to answer it using that link that is on your screen. This question is, a technician is troubleshooting a north-south traffic flow. Which of the following would best describe this connection? As always, of course, remember, there are no answers in the chat room, no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to answer by following the link that you see on your screen, which is professormesser.com/QA. So a technician is troubleshooting a north-south connection. Which of the following would best describe this connection? Is it a backup process between data center web servers? Is it certificate retrieval from a local HSM? Is it authentications to a cloud-based directory service? Is it lag between two core switches? Or is it transfer of log data between local file servers? Again, if you think you know the answer, you can see the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. In the meantime, while you are doing that, let's talk about what we are doing today. Thank you for being here. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for carving out a little bit of your time to learn a little bit more about the Network Plus and the exam objectives and all of the things that surround that. Of course, when we are not here live, we are certainly online and available, not only at professormesser.com/YouTube. If you've not subscribed to our YouTube channel, you might want to consider doing that. We, of course, have connections on Twitter or X at professormesser.com/Twitter or professormesser.com/X, where you can find our weekly Network Plus pop quiz question. We also have that question on Instagram at professormesser.com/Instagram, and there's many other places you can find us online as well. Today, we're going to talk specifically about the N10-009 Network Plus exam. That N10-009 is the version of this exam that was released on June the 20th of 2024. So almost a year ago was when this exam was first released. That means that we have about 2.5 years before this exam is due to retire. So you've hit it right at the perfect time. You have plenty of time to be able to study. The estimated retirement for this exam is somewhere in the fourth quarter of 2027. This is a 90-minute exam. You might get not as many as 90 questions on your exam. You might get fewer than 90. The score that you need is on a scale from 100 to 900, and you need to score 720. There are lots of questions on this exam. Many of them are multiple choice questions, but there are also performance-based questions, and we'll talk in a moment about what performance-based questions are and what you can expect. Of course, we have downloadable videos, we have course notes, we have so much more on our website. You should go have a look there. You can find out more there at professormesser.com/netsuccess. If you have our Success Bundle, then you also have our course notes, our Exam Hacks ebook. You get priority Q&A access to this live stream and others. Find out more there at professormesser.com/netsuccess. I make a replay available of this video right after we're done. When I click the stop button, it is automatically added to our YouTube channel. One of the things that I also do is create an audio-only podcast version of this event, and I publish it in that podcast format that is readable and automatically downloadable by all of your favorite podcast listening programs. If you'd like to add your podcast listening program to this, You can find it at professormesser.com/podcast, where you'll find links to our A+, our Network Plus, and our Security Plus study groups. We also, of course, have that video replay. And if you look at the YouTube video description in about 24 hours from now, you will see that it is populated with timestamps that show exactly what we did during this event. This is not AI. This is real eye. This is real intelligence. It's my marketing manager, Lori, that goes through this video and very precisely and accurately finds exactly what we're doing, puts it into this list, and allows you to jump to exactly what you need once this event is over. And you can go back years to find all of this information. She's watching this replay now, so give her a hello in the chat. She's, of course, watching the chat replay go by as well, and probably watching me at 2x speed to get through it as quickly as humanly possible, and who could blame her? This is so useful, by the way, if you are studying for your exam. We have so much in our archives that you can go through. Maybe this will speed things up for you just a bit. That's at our YouTube video description on our channel at youtube.com/Professor Messer. When we're done here, we will be over in our Discord server, pretty much like we always are. You can find me there a lot of the time at professormesser.com/Discord. Not only do we have thousands of people that are studying for their A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus exams, there are lots of folks there that are starting up their own study rooms. It's something that we set up so that you can build your own study room, have other people join. You will be able to manage it. And then when everybody leaves the room, it automatically disappears from the Discord server. What could be easier? And if somebody's already got a room going, you can jump right in there. That's why the rooms exist, so that you're able to study just a little bit better. Find out more about that at professormesser.com/Discord. We have such a great community there. You really should check it out. Of course, eventually you will need to take your Network Plus exam. And there's, of course, a cost associated with taking the Network Plus exam. But there is a way to maybe get a little bit of a discount off of that by going over to our website at professormesser.com/vouchers. If you are in the U.S. or Canada or a U.S. territory, you can get a discounted voucher by simply visiting that page. You don't need a coupon code. You don't need an extension in your browser. You don't have to do anything special. You simply need to go to professormesser.com/vouchers. One of the things you'll also notice recently is that the vouchers have been updated with retake options. So if you are taking your Network Plus exam, but you'd like a little bit of insurance, there's an extra $49 retake option that you can add to the vouchers now. That's all available on our website at professormesser.com/vouchers. And not only do you get a voucher at a discount, you also get a free copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. This is an exclusive book you cannot get anywhere else. It is only available with the purchase of a voucher or purchase of one of our success bundles. It gives you tips, tricks, and ideas on how you can study and things you can do during the exam itself to give you the best possible way to earn some points, some interesting strategies. Find out more about all of this at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's now go to the question we asked earlier, which is, a technician is troubleshooting a north-south traffic flow. Which of the following would best describe this connection? Is it backup process between data center web servers, certificate retrieval from a local HSM, authentications to a cloud-based directory service, lag between two core switches, or transfer of log data between local file servers? Let's find out what you chose. We're going to close the poll and show the results. 44% of you say authentications to a cloud-based directory service. 25% say it's backup processes between data center web servers. We have 15% that say lag between two core switches. And then 13% said transfer of log data between local file servers. Well, this is an interesting one because it is talking about a very specific traffic flow. In this particular case, it is a north-south traffic flow. We have two different traffic flows within a data center. We have an east-west traffic flow. The east-west traffic flow is traffic between devices that are in the same data center. They're in the same room. They're in the same very large facility and communicating back and forth between all of those, not going outside the building. They're all within our same data center. And then if you have north-south traffic flows, you are communicating outside of the data center. So if you need to transfer information to a different data center, if you need to communicate to a device that is on the internet, if you're communicating anywhere other than locally, it is a north-south traffic flow. So this is something where if you are on this network, this is a data center, there's got an internet connection, there are core switches and routers, there are work group or top of rack switches, there are servers and other devices. If you are communicating back and forth outside, which means you're going to the internet and back, that is north-south traffic. And within the same data center, it is east-west traffic. So that is something we can evaluate based on the question. We're, of course, looking for north-south traffic flow, so this will be communication outside of our data center. So let's take it one step at a time. 3% said certificate retrieval from a local hardware manager. Now, one thing to keep in mind, by the way, as we go through this, you'll notice there are definite connections between the terminology we use in the answers to try to tell you where the devices are located. A local HSM is going to contain certificates and other important information, but if it's a local hardware security manager, hardware security module, then that device is on your local network. It's an east-west traffic flow, would not be north-south. So only 3%, you guys knew that one right away. 13% said transfer of log data between local file servers, which means it is east-west. It is not north-south, so it would not be that answer. 15% said a lag between two core switches. This is not referring to a response time. This is referring to the ability to have a link aggregation between two core switches. That's what a LAG, capital LAG means. That link aggregation is occurring between local devices. We don't tend to do link aggregation across or outside of a building. So therefore, between these two core switches, it is an east-west traffic flow. We have 25% that said backup processes between data center web servers. Well, these are web servers in our data center. That's east-west traffic flow, not north-south, which leaves the only remaining answer, authentications to a cloud-based directory service. The cloud-based directory service is in the cloud up here, outside in the internet. So when we are authenticating, we're probably going from a device that is on our network, and we are communicating out to the cloud and then back in again. That is clearly a north-south traffic flow, which means that is the answer we were looking for. 44% of you got that one absolutely correct. It is a north-south traffic flow. You did very well with that one, although I think we might have done a little better last week. This is one of those topics, though, you do need to know for the Network Plus exam, so make sure you check the exam objectives. This is in section 1.6. Network Architectures is the name of the video where I describe this particular question and this particular topic. Well, this brings us to a new question. That was one from last week. Let's now do a bunch of new topics. We have all new content that I've created for you. What's interesting about this one is this next question is not a multiple choice question. This next question is a performance-based question, and you may have seen that come up in an earlier slide. That term performance-based question effectively means it's anything but multiple choice. This could be a fill in the blank. They could put you at a command prompt and ask you to perform a function. It could be a matching question. It might be one where you have to put things in a particular order. It can be a drag and drop question. It could be, they can format this any way they would like. But keep in mind that the performance-based question will always contain topics that are contained within your official CompTIA exam objectives. And as I like to say, it really doesn't matter how they ask the question. If you know the content, if you know your exam objectives, you will be able to answer it without any problem at all. So for today, I have for you a brand new performance-based question. And it's one where I would like you to tell me what you would do at this command prompt. The question states, a network technician is troubleshooting an issue with slow response times to www, www.microsoft.com, and we would like to answer these questions during this troubleshooting process. What are the aliases of the www.microsoft.com web server? So give me, and there's more than one. So I would like you to give me the command that would provide you with that information. What command would you run? In fact, I can think of two commands that I would accept as being an answer. Is that too much information? I'm not sure it is. Remember, of course, if you know the answer, please answer in the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Next on our list is this question. Once you know what those aliases are, once you've answered that first one, I want you to tell me what command would provide the information of how many network sessions are active between your device and www.microsoft.com. So there's your two questions I have for you. If you're troubleshooting response time, this would be a very common series of steps that you would go through to be able to help troubleshoot and get further down the road of resolving that particular issue. How many network sessions are active between your device and www.microsoft.com? So those are obviously two different commands. I'm looking for an answer with two different commands associated with it. What's interesting, though, as an extra bonus, if you can tell me what the aliases are of www.microsoft.com, I'll give you some bonus virtual non-existent internet points is what I will give you. You'll have the satisfaction of a job well done. That is what I will provide to you, is that particular piece of it. We'll step through it and see what we think the answers are. If you do think you know the answers, go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. And remember what your answer was. It's interesting. I'm seeing a mix of different answers come in. So this will be an interesting one to go through to try to determine what the answer might be. So see if you know what the two answers are that I think it would be the right answer. This would be a good one. This would be an interesting one. In fact, I see a number of people answering spot on. I have other people that are answering other things. So we're definitely not 100% locked into this one. And see if you can give me another extra bonus magic points here. Virtual, non-existent, worthless points are that first question, what are the aliases of the Microsoft.com web server? I'd like to know also what the two commands would be that you could possibly use for this. And notice that I'm showing you a kind of a Unix-ish sort of terminal up here, but this also works for Windows. So it doesn't matter what operating system you're using. What are the two commands you would use for the first question, and what are the aliases that I'm mentioning? And then in the last question, it's just a single command. Much simpler. The number of sessions active between your device and Microsoft.com are not as important because we have no way to really verify that. But I would like you to tell me how you would verify that, how that would work, how you would make that happen. So this should be pretty good. Number of great answers coming in, by the way. You folks are doing well with your command lines. I can tell you have been studying the command line side of things. Now that we have a lot of answers that have come in, let's step through each one of these to determine what I think the answer might be and what options you might have available. So we'll start with the very first one, which is, what are the aliases of the www.microsoft.com web server? And to see those, maybe I'll bring this up myself and we'll do it interactively, which would be a lot more fun than just doing this sort of in real time. Or I have slides made up, but why would we do slides? I can put the information on the screen, and I'll simply put this right here at the top. Let's see if we can make it. Oh, I know what to do. We'll do that right there. There we go. So here's my command line. See, we're live right now. And the question is asking us, what are the aliases of the www.microsoft.com web server? So a number of you have given me answers. One of them would be dig, D-I-G. So you would use the dig command, www.microsoft.com. Let's just try that. Let's just see what the results are of what we get. And you can see when we do that, we get a lot of information on the screen. Dig is a very verbose command. It tells you a lot about a lot. But really, the answer that we're looking for is a very specific piece in here. So you do want to become familiar with what you see on the screen. The very first part of the dig command is a header that describes the version of dig you're running, and it describes the command that you've typed in this case, www.microsoft.com, and it gives you a header information. It's a query. There's no error. The ID is 8907. There's a lot of flags in here. This is basically just a summary of what we are asking. So that's good. That's good information. We can see that it did accept, and we have put in the information that's there. Then it gives you information that are different options that you have enabled. We don't have a lot of options here, but we have been querying this information, and it is www.microsoft.com. And the query that I'm asking for is an internet address, and it is an A, which is an IPv4 query. And then we get this answer section. Look at all this in the answer section. We have the www.microsoft.com has a CNAME record, a canonical name DNS record associated with itself. So www.microsoft.com is actually www.microsoft.com-c-3.edgekey.net. That's a big alias there, a big canonical name. Until you see that there's also a canonical name for that canonical name. There are multiple canonicals. You can see that the www.microsoft.com-c-3.edgekey.net also has an alias of www.microsoft.com-c-3.edgekey.net.globalreader.akadns.net. That's a much larger alias for that. But wait, we're not done. There's another canonical name of that canonical name, and it is www.microsoft.com-c-3.edgekey.net.globalreader.akadns.net has a canonical name of e13678.dscb.akamaiedge.net. Finally, we have our fourth line here, which is the actual IP address of the canonical name of the canonical name of the canonical name, E13678. You see it. The final IP address is 23.197.210.94 on my query. Your IP address may be different. In fact, the canonical names you see may be different depending on where you are in the world. But this is a great overview and an interesting overview of how these companies create a single named server called Microsoft.com. But in reality, behind the scenes, there's a lot more going on to get you to that web server. Another one that does this very well, by the way, is Cisco. They all have almost a very similar, if not nearly identical process that's occurred. If you were to go, well, let's do it. Dig www.cisco.com. And you can see Cisco has a similar scenario going on here. Now, if you're in Windows, you probably don't have dig available. There are some dig executables available in Windows. But let's get my head out of the way. Let's do the same command, use not traceroute, in doing NSLOOKUP, which is the other command you could use other than dig. And if you're in Windows, this is probably the command that you used. I'm going to type www.microsoft.com. Notice that this is a much more compact answer. We can see that it is simply telling us we're using server 1.1.1.1 because I am using the server that is at Cloudflare. And you can see that it's the same answer. You can see that's Microsoft.com it actually spells it out, canonical name, and there's the canonical name. Then it takes that one, has a canonical name. There it is. Looks very similar. Has the third canonical name, finally goes to that one, and then finally we have the name and the IP address. So it's the same information, although you'll notice the IP address is different on this one than it was on the other because that's the way that they've designed it to be. So you're supposed to get different IP addresses depending on the process, the time of day, the location where you live in the world, and a lot of other parameters that they have set up. So very simple, very to the point. If you just want the answer, NSLOOKUP is a good way to do it. NSLOOKUP, though, it has been deprecated. It is software that probably will not continue to be updated. Dig will be the new NSLookup going forward until we decide that we don't like Dig anymore, at which time you'll need to learn whatever the new one will be. So that is the answer to that first question, which was, what is the alias of the Microsoft.com web server? And indeed, I ran a dig command to get that, but I also did an NSLookup. There's the NSLookup. So now you can see both of those work exactly the same. They just look different on the screen. So you'll be able to tell as you go through that. If you're in Windows, you'll certainly be using NSLookup because dig is not included with Windows by default. You'd have to go out to the internet and rummage around to find that. Although these days, finding a compiled executable of dig is becoming more and more difficult. You might just want to stick with NSLookup. The next command that we were asking about was how many network sessions are active between your device and Microsoft.com. This is a very different question. This is a question that is asking from our computer how many individual sessions are communicating out to www.microsoft.com. So for instance, if you brought up a web server and you typed in www.microsoft.com, a lot of information appears in your browser. But most of that information is being sent over one or more individual sessions. So there might be a number of different sessions open between your device and the Microsoft.com web server, which, as you know now, is some other server that has some other canonical name that's somewhere down in that list. But the same thing still applies. So let's see what my results were. What I ran was a netstat command, network statistics. Netstat is designed to show you communications that are inbound or outbound from this device. And it shows you this by either IP address. I did a -N here at the top so that I could see it by IP address. But if you simply ran netstat without the -N, perfectly reasonable. In fact, it will show you the fully qualified domain names in this list. I'm so used to writing it with the -N because I'm so IP focused that I often forget it will show me all of the fully qualified domain names. So if you're looking for a specific IP address, we of course have the IP addresses in that list. You can see exactly what's there in that list, but this is only giving you the perspective of what's happening on your device. This is how many sessions are connected outbound from your device and how many sessions are connected inbound to your device. You have no idea how to get to those other IP addresses. You have no idea how many hops away these other IP addresses are. You have no idea if they're local, if they're remote. That's not what netstat does. A number of you chose traceroute as your answer here, but traceroute does not show you how many active sessions are currently going on between you and that remote device. Traceroute shows you what are the routers, what are the hops between you and that other device, which does not tell you anything about how much traffic you're sending to that device. So that is exactly the difference. Make sure you keep that in mind as you're looking at the differences between netstat and traceroute. They are two very different commands showing you different pieces of information. They are very separated from each other. They're used for different tasks and show you different information. So unlike dig and NSLookup, which effectively provide you with the same output, the netstat and the traceroute are very different. They are not in the same category. They show you something completely different and how that would work. So those were the commands we were looking for. If we go back to our question, what are the aliases of the Microsoft.com web server? You saw the aliases, and we were able to find those using dig and netstat. And if you know what the aliases were, you found them, you identified them in your output, you get extra virtual points on that one, certainly. And then how many network sessions are active between our device and Microsoft.com? That was the netstat command. So those were our two commands. You could either answer dig or NSLookup for the first question, and netstat is the only answer I will accept for the second answer. There are, of course, many other utilities and functions within Linux, within Windows that you could use to display that information, but we're sticking to the exam objectives, and the only command line in the exam objectives that show us anything close to this would be indeed netstat. So that gives you an idea of things you should know for this exam. Hopefully, it's giving you some ideas of how you might use some of these command line prompts in a real world purpose as well, which is always good so that you can see how we actually use these when we're troubleshooting problems in the field. Let's now shift gears back to a multiple choice question and see how well you do with this one. This multiple choice question asks, if I can bring it up on my side, a network technician would like users to seamlessly move between access points as they travel between building floors. Which of the following should be configured? Should we configure WPA3, band steering, SSID, PSK, or SVI? These are all a bunch of abbreviations and things. Fortunately, I saw a real word up there somewhere. So band steering didn't have an abbreviation, so that was good. If you think you know the answer to this question, as always with all of our questions, please visit this link, professormesser.com/QA, to submit your question and your answer to this question. You would not be submitting the question. You'd be submitting the answer. And please don't put any answers in the chat room. Please don't put any hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to submit your answer. See how well you do with this one. All of these answers seem to be very wireless network centric. So we will see if we know which one of these should really be used for this particular task. I'm not looking at the answers, so I can't, I'm putting my hand over my eyes, but I can't see them. They're not on the screen that I have in front of me. I'm just looking at what you're looking at. There is a screen where I can see your submitted answers, so I can peek, but I'm not going to peek because it's more fun this way. Let's see how you do with this particular one. A lot of people locking in their answers quickly on this one, which I never know if that means we know this one really well, or if this is one where maybe we just are guessing. We don't know, and we're just throwing it out there. We're just picking what we think the best answer might be, which, by the way, is a great strategy. On your exam, if you don't know the answer something. One thing we know about the exam is that you are not penalized for guessing. You are not penalized for a wrong answer. You don't get any points for a wrong answer, but they don't take any points away from you for a wrong answer. So never leave an answer blank. Always submit a question, because on a multiple choice question, you might luck up and get it right. Free points for everybody. Who doesn't want that? Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a network technician would like users to seamlessly move between access points as they travel between building floors. Which of the following should be configured? Would it be WPA3, band steering, SSID, PSK, or SVI? What did you answer? Well, 65% of you answered SSID. Certainly a very strong majority. And we still have single digits, though. 14% of you said WPA3. 10% of you said band steering. We also have single digits with 6% saying SVI and 5% said PSK. Well, this is a situation that you've probably seen, you've probably even experienced, but you didn't even know what was really happening behind the scenes. You just move from building to building, or you move from floor to floor. I take the train sometimes here in Central Florida. You are on the Wi-Fi network in the train station. When you get on the train and you head down the road, you're still in the same Wi-Fi network. How do they do that? Because I'm clearly not connecting to the access points that were back at the train station, and I didn't have to do anything extra. It just seamlessly moved from one wireless network to the other, even a wireless network that is moving on the train tracks. And we're able to do that because of the configuration of our wireless network. This is how many companies have their wireless network set up, because you don't just have one big access point in a building. You may have tens or even hundreds of access points scattered around an entire campus. The function that we are looking for in our wireless network is a way to extend that network from one access point to the other and seamlessly move us between all of those access points. What we are looking for is a network name that can be shared across those, and that is referred to as an extended service set identifier, or ESSID. That is exactly the scenario that we are in. So if you're in one part of the building, you've got an access point here, or an access point manager, a switch in this particular case, that is connecting access points. You can see these access points have been set up, and you can see they are different access points because they have a different basic service set ID. That's effectively the MAC address of that wireless access point. You can see these wireless access points do have different MAC IDs. So these are separate physical units. They do, however, have the same SSID. They have the same wireless network name associated with it. In this case, the wireless network name is SGC1. And here's my mobile phone, and the old one with the fingerprint reader, because for some reason, that's the icon I chose to use. And I'm on this network, on this access point, and then I walk down to the next building, let's say. In the next building, my phone is with me, and as I move to the next building, it seamlessly connects to that other access point without me having to do anything, which is how we want it to work. That is the beauty of an extended service set, ESS, and using that ESS ID is what allows us to have that seamless communication between physical access points. So if you answered ESS ID, got that one absolutely correct. That is what we were looking for, was the ESS ID. This is from my course, the N10-009 course, section 2.3. The name of the video is Wireless Networking, where I describe that. WPA3 is a security and encryption method for wireless networks. It does not provide any seamless handoff functionality. It's really there for authentication and encryption. So WPA3 is also enabled on these, but we had to do a little bit more than simply adding WPA3 to the configuration. Band steering is a way to redirect client devices to a particular frequency. So if you want people to connect to the 5 gigahertz signal instead of the 2.4 gigahertz signal, even though the 5 gigahertz signal happens to be less powerful, we still want people going to 5 gigahertz. We would configure band steering to be able to do this. This has nothing to do with trombones, has nothing to do with the tuba section. This is something completely different. It's about wireless networking. I don't even know where you got that. 6% of you said SVI, 5% said PSK. Having some type of switched virtual interface or having a pre-shared key on your wireless network are useful functions and may be designed into the configuration of your network, but they have nothing to do with seamlessly moving between access points. The only answer here that really had anything to do with seamlessly moving between those access points is our extended service set identifier, ESS ID. That's the answer we were looking for, and that's the one you got absolutely correct. Well done. Let's do another question. We're going to keep going through this list. Next on our list is this one. This question asks, a technician would like to query a DNS server for the FQDN of specific IP addresses. Which of the following records should be configured on the DNS server? Again, this one happens to be abbreviations. Is it a PTR, MX, CNAME, A, or TXT? A technician would like to query a DNS server for the FQDN of specific IP addresses. Just that one sentence has way too many letters in it. Which of the following records should be configured on the DNS server? Is it PTR, MX, CNAME, A, or TXT? If you know the answer, use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to pick out what answer you think it is. And I don't have a way for you to tell me that I put too many abbreviations and acronyms in the question itself. You'll just have to tell me in person. That's a bad idea too. Don't do that either. You could tell me that's way too many. It is a lot of abbreviations in one single question. I wasn't realizing that when I wrote it, but when you say it out loud in a live stream, it's very clear that there are a lot of abbreviations in that particular question. See if you know the answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA to submit your answer. Thank you, Daniel, in the chat room. Too many abbreviations in the question. That's what I was looking for. Just need somebody to keep me in line. That's all. Just tell me how that works. We should have some type of get together. We should all go down to Disney Springs. We should just hang out and talk tech one day. We should probably do that. That'd be a lot of fun, I think. Figure out the details. I know there's a SANS training that's going on right now at Disney. I did get my email about that one. We should have just all done that one. That would have been great to figure out the details of this. Let's see how you did with this question. The question again asks, A technician would like to query a DNS server for the FQDN of a specific IP address. Which the following record should be configured on the DNS server? Is it PTR, MX, CNAME, A, or TXT? What could it possibly be? Let's see what you think. We'll stop our poll and see what you think the answer is. You see, we've got a lot of different options in here. Not a majority. We have 43% of you said it's a PTR. 28% said it's a CNAME. 23% said it's an A. We have 4% that say MX and 1% say it is a TXT record. Well, if we're querying a DNS server, not for we're not looking for an IP address, we're looking for the fully qualified domain name. That's what an FQDN is. So it's a little bit different than the DNS query we did earlier, where we were querying and trying to determine what this answer would be if we were querying an IP address and trying to get an IP address from the DNS server by telling it, NSLOOKUP www.microsoft.com, and it gave us an IP address. That wasn't this question. This question, we're querying the DNS server to get the fully qualified domain name. So we're giving the DNS server an IP address, and we want the DNS server to tell us if it knows what the fully qualified domain name happens to be. This is called a reverse lookup because this is reverse of what you would normally do on a DNS server. So what you would choose is a pointer record. That's it. This is the way that you can have a record in the DNS server so that if anyone ever queries with a particular IP address, we will respond back with the fully qualified domain name. Not all IP addresses have a pointer record. So you can try typing in an IP address into an NSLOOKUP just to see what you would get, but you probably would not get a response back. So this is what you would expect to see in the configuration of the DNS server. You would have the IP address. In this case, it is 2.15.17. This is the number, the last number of the IP address, which is 192.168.23.2. You'll notice in a DNS server, everything is shown backwards, which is not confusing at all. And you can see that the .2 address has a pointer record, which is joe.example.com. If we query with 192.168.23.15, the DNS server will respond back with www.example.com. So that is what a fully qualified domain name would provide to us, is that view of the answer. That's what we were looking for. That is exactly what we were hoping to find, was the pointer record. If you wanted more information on all of these different DNS records that you need to know, it is in my video 3.4 on the N10-009 course. The name of the video is aptly named DNS Records. There are other records in here. An MX record is a pointer to your, I shouldn't say pointer because that's a different kind of record. The MX record is a DNS record that designates your mail server. That's an important one for your incoming, and in some cases, outgoing mail. We have a CNAME record. We already know that's canonical name. That's an alias that you would configure. That was not the question we had. An A record, you also saw a reference to this one earlier. That's the address record, specifically an IPv4 address. Here, we weren't looking for an IPv4 address. We were looking for the fully qualified domain name, the FQDN. And a text record commonly keeps information that is important to have in some type of human readable form. We often will put text records in our DNS server that show information on anti-spam functions. Sometimes you are requested to put information into your DNS server in a text record that is able to prove that you put it into the DNS server. Having control of your DNS server is a big deal. It designates that you are in control of this domain. And so if you can add information into the DNS record, into the text record on your DNS server, then that is a good way to check to see if you really are in control of that domain. So it's a nice authentication check for a number of different things. The answer here is PTR. 43% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well, if you've already looked through a number of these questions we've done so far, before we get to this next question, by the way, before we get there we go. We have this I would like to bring up. Something you may not be aware of is, of course, we have our entire Network Plus course available for you to watch for free online. It is 87 videos over 12 hours of content that make up this complete Network Plus course that you can watch every minute of every video. Nothing is held behind any type of paywall. You don't have to register. There is zero barriers between you and this video course. That's by design. There's a lot of information in this course, though. And if you're trying to query a DNS server for an FQDN with a specific IP, you may find that that's a lot of information to keep track of. There's a lot of details in this particular exam. So what I did was take every bit of information from every video that's in this course, and I added it to a set of course notes. All of the text, all of the important graphics, all of the important tables, everything that is listed in our videos is also in this set of course notes. Not only do we have this in that digital PDF form that you just saw, we also create physical versions of the course notes. They are, of course, identical to the things you just saw go by. They're just in a physical printed form that I cut down trees and put this up there for you. It's okay. We planted more trees. We can do that. That's exactly the way it works. So this is can be shipped to you while you're waiting for this to arrive. If you purchase this physical edition version, you get the digital edition for free. So you can start going through the PDF version that you have here and read up on it until this one arrives in the mail for you. We ship anywhere in the world. You will be shown the shipping information and shipping costs during the checkout process. If you'd like to know more about that, you can find it on our website, professormesser.com/NPCN for our Network Plus course notes. Back to the questions, everybody. Here's the next question on our list, and it asks, a network engineer is implementing NAC. Which of the following would be commonly associated with this implementation? Would it be STP, SAN, IPsec, 802.1x, or CDN? Again, with the abbreviations. It's an important part of this exam. I don't know what to tell you, especially Network Plus. It's one of those. Let's see if you know the answer. If you do know the answer, use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to answer the question. Please, no answers in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. Instead, go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. The question again asks, a network engineer is implementing NAC. Which of the following would be commonly associated with this implementation? Is it STP, SAN, IPsec, 802.1x, CDN? It's got to be one of those, right? Lock in your answer. See if you know what the answer is. See if maybe you've even done this. Maybe you have implemented NAC. We have to know what NAC is to be able to answer this question, which, by the way, is an interesting strategy that you will see on the exam. Is very often the questions will have abbreviations, and they will just assume that you know what the abbreviation means. This is a very good example of this, because if you don't know what implementing NAC is, it's very difficult to answer the rest of this question. And that's why we have to really understand the intricacies of the abbreviations, the acronyms, the 3-letter acronyms, 4-letter acronyms, or more that we tend to deal with in our Network Plus course. I haven't counted acronyms, and if you look at the acronyms that are listed in the back of the Network Plus exam objectives, it's just 2 pages worth. And in fact, the Security Plus exam has more than twice the number of acronyms listed in the back, which is odd because I always tend to think the networking folks have many more acronyms than the Security Plus. One of the things I think is that we just don't get deep enough into it on the network side. Every protocol is an acronym, it seems. So you really have to know what these things are when you're getting into them. Let's see how you did with this question. It asks, a network engineer is implementing NAC. Which of the following would be commonly associated with this implementation? Is it STP, SAN, IPsec, 802.1x, or CDN? What would it be? Let's see what you chose. 55% of you say the answer is 802.1x, a majority, a slim majority, but I'm going to take it. 55%. 19%, though, say the answer is IPsec. We also have 12% that say the answer is CDN. And then it's down to single digits, a tie for last place. STP at 7%, SAN at 6%. It's close enough for a tie. We're going to call it a tie on that one to be able to work through it. So implementing NAC, this is something that is referred to as a good way to keep people off the network. Network access control, NAC. Network access control is there because, as I've often mentioned, a previous role that I had was as a systems engineer, where I would travel from place to place. I would see 3 or 4 different companies a day. We would walk into their facility. We would go into a conference room. We would meet them at their desk. We'd meet them in a break room. Wherever there was room, we would sit down and talk. And every time I went into a building, because I was going in representing a cybersecurity company. And so my cybersecurity hat was on when I would walk in the door. How easy was it to park in the parking lot? How much of a wireless signal am I seeing from my car in the parking lot? When I walk in the door, how am I greeted? Is there someone there greeting? Is there simply a phone? How do you get in through the door? Do I need to wear a badge? Can I hide the badge? Does anybody stop me? As I walk into the conference room, often people will drop us off in the conference room and say, people will be in a moment. I'm looking around to see what ports might be available in the wall. Are there Ethernet jacks in the wall? What is keeping me from simply plugging into an Ethernet connection and effectively having full reign to the inside of the network? Well, the thing that's stopping me in most of these environments is network access control. This provides a type of security that will effectively disable any communication until I authenticate on the network. That is a specific configuration. There's a standard for this that the IEEE has created. The standard is called 802.1X. The X is not a holding place. That's not a something just keeping a space there. That's the actual name of the standard, 802.1 capital X. That's an actual standard. And so that is the standard for the authentication process that occurs when you connect to the network. We often think of this as a network access control that is on a wireless network. That's where you see it implemented very often, so that other people can't connect to the wireless network. You have to have your username, you have to have your password, or whatever authentication that you are using. But it is also able to be run on wired networks as well. Network access control. It's any type of network. So if you want to prevent people from connecting to a network when you plug into one of those jacks, you better be running network access control using 802.1X. If you chose that one, you got it absolutely right. That was the answer we were looking for. That is covered in my video 4.3 device security. That is the 802.1X. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, which means you probably already have a certification, or you're collecting continuing education units to be able to apply towards other things, I would like to send you an email that gives you 1 hour of a webinar category CEU just for watching this video. You can do this whether you're watching live or whether you're watching on demand. The way that you would receive one of these emails is you would go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. Under Contact Us, you want to click that Contact Us link. It will bring up a form, put in your name, put in your email address, and then in the body of the message on a line by itself, or on the subject line, it will ask you for a subject line. Please put June 2025 Network Plus. That's a pretty good description of what we're doing today. And in the body of the message on the line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, 802.1X NAC. Those are our super secret code words of the month. And then you can put anything else in that message you would like. I do read through every single one of these. Unfortunately, I'm not able to respond back to everyone because we get hundreds of these in every month. But I do like to see where you are with your studies. Is this something that you're renewing a different certification? How are you using this? Or you don't have to put anything. Just put the super secret code words, hit send. I'll take it from there. I know exactly what you need. Again, the process is you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. You click Contact Us, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put June 2025 Network Plus or something close to that. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, 802.1X NAC. Those are the super secret code words of the month. Hit send. It takes me about a week or so to get those back to you. But that is something that I will get back to you as long as you follow those instructions. You must follow those instructions to earn the CEU. You can't just email me directly. You can't put other things in there. You have to have those super secret code words. If they're not there, you don't get the credit. So make sure you follow those instructions. They're relatively easy. I think you won't have any problem with that, and I'll be glad to send that email to you. We're getting close to the top of the hour, but we're not there yet. So let's do another question, shall we? Next question on our list is this one that asks, a user in the engineering department keeps getting assigned an IP address used by the marketing department. Which of the following is the most likely reason for this issue? Is it DHCP address pool exhaustion, STP is not enabled, duplicate IP address assignments, the switch interface is administratively down, or incorrect VLAN assignment? Those are your 5 options, which all of these are not great. All of these are bad, but which one of them is causing this particular issue? Again, the question asks, a user in the engineering department keeps getting assigned an IP address used by the marketing department. Which of the following is the most likely reason for this issue? Is it DHCP address pool exhaustion, STP is not enabled, duplicate IP address assignments, the switch interface is administratively down, or an incorrect VLAN assignment? If you think you know the answer, use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you know what the answer happens to be. Let's see what you think the answer might be. A lot of answers going in really quick this time. I think we might have really great results on this one. We're going to see. I'm never sure if we're going to have great results or if we're just randomizing it because nobody really knows what the answer happens to be. Let's see if you do know what the answer happens to be. The question asks, a user in the engineering department keeps getting assigned an IP address used by the marketing department. Which of the following is the most likely reason for this issue? Is it DHCP address pool exhaustion, STP is not enabled, duplicate IP address assignments, the switch interface is administratively down, or is it an incorrect VLAN assignment? What did you say? 62% of you say it's an incorrect VLAN assignment, but 19% of you say it's a duplicate IP address. 15% say it's a DHCP address pool exhaustion, and then a tie, a literal tie for last place. 2% say STP is not enabled, and 2% say the switch interface is administratively down. As many of you know, the IP addresses that you are assigned automatically through DHCP are specific to the subnet that you happen to be on when you make the request to the DHCP server. The DHCP server recognizes what subnet you're on. It picks an IP address out of the pool that is specific to your subnet, and it sends it off to you. And that's how you're assigned that particular IP address in that particular range that comes from that particular pool. The IP address means that that subnet is one that you are on. You are connected to that particular subnet. So if you're getting an IP address that is supposed to go to a different subnet, well, guess what? That means you're on that subnet. It doesn't go to a different subnet. You're the one on the wrong subnet, not the IP address. So your issue really is a VLAN assignment. The interface on your switch has simply been assigned to the incorrect VLAN. So this person in the engineering department is plugged into an interface on the switch, and that interface has been marked with the VLAN that is associated with the marketing department. And because of that, he's getting a marketing department IP address instead of an engineering department IP address. That's something we want to do. So you want to check the switch interface. You want to see what the configuration options are. You want to look at the VLAN numbers. This is switch interfaces that are on a switch that I used to have. I have a VLAN 1, a VLAN 100, and a VLAN 254. There were a couple of those that are associated with that. Fortunately, it's a common problem, and fortunately, it's an easy fix. We just change the VLAN configuration in the switch config, and it moves them to the correct VLAN. They restart the process, either start over with their computer, unplug the connection, plug it back in, do a DHCP refresh, and now we have the correction made because we changed the configuration in the switch. It's a VLAN assignment that caused our problem. That was the answer that we were looking for, and 62% of you got that one absolutely correct. If you'd like more information on that one, it is in section 5.3. The video name is Switching Issues. 19% of you said it's duplicate IP address assignments. If that was the case, we'd be getting a duplicate IP that was existing on the engineering network, not getting an IP address from some other network somewhere else. And a DHCP server is not going to hand out duplicate IP addresses. That is something that can only happen if you have misconfigured DHCP servers, or perhaps you have some other type of manually configured device on the network that is also using an IP address that exists in the pool from the DHCP server. We didn't get any messages in this that told us that there was a duplicate anywhere, so we can already dismiss the idea that it is a duplicate IP address. If there were no IP addresses in the DHCP pool, which would be a DHCP address pool exhaustion, doesn't mean it's tired, just means it's empty. We've gotten rid of all of the IP addresses in our pool. If that's the case, you don't get an IP address. Well, what happens when you don't get an IP address from a DHCP server? You in most operating systems will get an APIPA address, an automatic IP address assignment, and that is one that can only work on your local network. But it is a unique IP, and you are at least able to communicate with devices on your single network. It is a non-routable address. It cannot communicate outside your subnet. It cannot communicate to the internet. It can only communicate to other devices that are on the same network as you. And then we have 2% apiece. 2% said spanning tree protocol is not enabled. In this context, that would be spanning tree protocol and not shielded twisted pair. STP has more than one type of term, set of abbreviations associated with it. Spanning tree is not enabled. If spanning tree was not enabled, we would be able to create a loop on the network. That is why we often enable spanning tree protocol. But in this case, we aren't talking about a loop. We're talking about getting the wrong IP address. So spanning tree has nothing to do with the problem that we are having. And 2% of you said the switch interface is administratively down. That means someone logged into the switch. They configured and put commands into the switch that disabled the interface connected to the engineering department's device. Well, if that was the case, you're not getting any IP address. You're not connected to the network. Someone turned off your port. Someone turned off your interface. So the only way to get an IP address is the interface has to be working. So an interface administratively down means that you don't get any IP address. In fact, you don't get a signal. You don't get anything. You're not even going to get an automatic IP address. You won't be able to communicate. So that's not the answer either. The answer here, very clearly, very obviously, incorrect VLAN assignment is exactly the one that we were looking for. I know we're at the top of the hour, but let's get another question in, shall we? We like abbreviations, right? That's what you've been telling me this whole time. Here's another one. Which of the following would best describe a TTL? Which of the following would best describe a TTL? A TTL, would it be number of seconds until a packet is dropped? Would it be the interval between router updates? Would it be a counter to prevent routing loops? Would it be the range of MTU sizes? Or would it be a DNS record used for anti-spam? A lot going on here. All 5 of these things are real things. Only one of them matches the question. The question again asks, which of the following would best describe a TTL? Is it the number of seconds until a packet is dropped? The interval between router updates? A counter to prevent routing loops? The range of MTU sizes? Or a DNS record used for anti-spam? You think you know the answer? Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. A lot of people locking it in on this one too. Are we going to do well on this one? We might. We might do good on this one. I have a good feeling about this one because we're really asking you about TTL. TTL is used in a number of different contexts. However, you have to know which context I am referring to here. Most of the contexts for TTL are very similar to each other. So it's not that big of a gap, not that big of a difference between those. But still, we do need to understand what that abbreviation is and where it would fit and which one of these things best describe it. You'll notice also, and this is also very common on the exam, I'm not asking you, what does TTL stand for? And then I list out a bunch of things that maybe it stands for. You will never get a question like that on your exam. You will never, never, never get a question like that on your exam. You will only get a question that is referring to the abbreviation and then how it is used, how it is implemented, how this technology manifests itself on your network. So that's what we want to do, is to be able to get to that. So let's see how we do with this one. The question again asks, which of the following would best describe a TTL? Would it be the number of seconds until a packet is dropped? Is it the interval between router updates? Is it a counter to prevent routing loops? Is it the range of MTU sizes? Or is it a DNS record used for anti-spam? Well, let's see what you chose. We will close our poll and let's see what you selected. 62% of you say it's the number of seconds until a packet is dropped. That's a very strong majority. 32% of you say it's a counter to prevent routing loops. And then 5% say it's the interval between router updates. 1% say it's the range of MTU sizes. And 0% say it's a DNS record used for anti-spam. TTL. TTL stands for time to live. Time to live. So if you are working with a system like we have on these networks, you have these packets going all over the place. These frames are going from one device to another, from one router to another, from one switch to another. They are traversing the network. They're going out to the internet. They're coming back again. I was mentioning in the pre-show, for example, that there was a situation where I identified a router loop on my ISP network. And I was talking about how frustrating it is to get a router loop fixed when the people you call have no idea what a router loop is. But one of the ways that I was able to see this router loop happening is I could see a difference in the time to live. I could see the packets that I'm sending in get down to a 0 TTL, and I could see the problems that were occurring when that happens. Time to live, however, is not an actual time. It's not a minute. It's not a second. It's not the time of day that we are referring to here. Of course, because we put time in the name, it has nothing to do with time. What sort of does? Time to live in this particular context is referring to watching how many routers a particular packet goes through until we decide that we need to drop it. Now, normally when you send information across the network, it might pass through 8, 9, maybe 10 different routers to get to that remote location and another 10 routers to get back. It's very common to set a time to live on these packets to 128 to 64 to 128 to 255. That is so that if there's a loop on the network, so it goes out to the internet and then it starts going back and forth between a couple of routers. This router says it should go here, but this router says it should go back. But that router said it should go here, but that router said it should go back. And it just loops back and forth constantly. Fortunately, these are unusual situations. You don't run into this very often. But imagine if you didn't have a way to know when to drop it. So if you set a time to live to 64, it would bounce around 64 times, probably just less than that because it took a couple of hops just to get there. And then after that hits 64, it's decreasing 1 every time. 63, 62, 61, 60, 59, 58. And then it gets all the way down to 0. And when the time to live hits 0, the router drops it. So that it will not constantly, in perpetual communication back and forth between both of these. Eventually, it will stop. So it's not referring to how long it takes to send this. So it's not the number of seconds until a packet is dropped, although that was the majority of you that chose that. The answer actually is the one 32% of you chose, which is a counter to prevent routing loops. That's one very common implementation of a TTL, is that counter that prevents routing loops. That's why we have that TTL in our IP packets, a pretty important one. And even though it has time to live in the name, this time has nothing to do with seconds, minutes, hours, or the time of day. It has to do with the number of hops. It should be time to live, hops to live is really what this should be. But that's not what we call it because that would make sense. We call it time to live so that we can ask questions like this one and confuse all of us. That's what we're talking about. It is indeed a counter to prevent routing loops, not the number of seconds. It also is not the interval between router updates, In fact, many routers don't even do router updates, so you have that going for you. So that's something you don't have to worry about. We also have range of MTU sizes. Nope, that's not what we are looking for either. It would not be a range of MTU sizes. Normally, you can set any range you want as long as the MTU is supported on those devices, but has nothing to do with TTL. A DNS record used for anti-spam is usually the text record, the TXT record. Text record is something where we would put an SPF record, a DMARC record. Those are the types of records we would use for anti-spam, but that's not what a TTL is. A TTL is a counter that decreases every time it goes through a router, so that when the TTL finally gets to 0, we know there must be some kind of loop and we can drop it from the network so that it doesn't create a much bigger problem as more and more packets hit the network and as more and more in the loop. And it's simply, instead of bringing down the network, we're just dropping the packet. You do get a message back also that says, hey, I'm a router and I dropped your packet because the TTL hit 0. If you're also looking at a packet capture, like Wireshark, like a sniffer, those devices have an expert function in there that when a TTL is 0, it shows you on the screen, TTL hit 0 on this one, just so you're aware. You have to know what to do at that point, but at least tells you in the packet capture, that's a situation where we did hit a time to live equal to 0. So you at least know that it occurred and you can act accordingly because now you know what a TTL is and what this means in the big picture of things. All of the questions that we did today come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. This is an important document. It contains everything you could possibly be asked about on this exam. It is a document you get directly from the CompTIA website. There's no single URL anymore. You are just visiting the Network Plus section of the CompTIA website, and you can download this PDF. This has everything you need to know for the exam. CompTIA sticks to this list very, very, very closely, which means if you know everything in this document, you're going to pass your exam. That's how good it is at going through this. So you at least have options that you could work through to be able to have this here. In fact, let's look at one of these. Compare and contrast transmission media and transceivers. So 802.11 standards, cellular, satellite, 802.3 standards, single mode versus multi-mode fiber, direct attached copper cable, twin ax, coaxial cable, cable speeds, plenum and non-plenum. These are the things we have to know. So that is the important part of this document, is it gives you a bullet by bullet by bullet breakdown of everything you need to know. Do not go outside the scope of this document. They're not going to ask you questions that go outside the scope of this document, at least not questions that count for any points. So if you stick to this document and you study from this document, you will be ready for your exam. And one of the things you'll notice is I built my training course from this document. So it's a perfect match. You now have exactly the information you need to pass this exam. You will very often see information from other courses that go outside the scope of this document. You'll go through practice exams that go outside the scope of this document. Enormous waste of your time. It is unnecessary and pointless to start studying other things that are outside the scope of this document because CompTIA stays so close to all of these, practically 100% on the exam. So that's the important part. Stick to the exam objectives and you'll be just fine. You can go to the CompTIA website at comptia.org or follow our link at professormesser.com/objectives to get to the CompTIA website. We do one of these study groups every month. I do have a Security Plus study group next month, so we're not done with June. You can still come back next week at this time, next Wednesday at noon Eastern, and I will have a study group for you on Security Plus. So if you like this one and you're studying for Security Plus, you might want to come back for that one as well. Our July dates are A+. We have the 8th and the 10th of July. On the 16th of July is our next Network Plus study group. And on the 23rd of July is our next Security Plus study group after next week. So it's something to think about, and I'll put that on your calendar. If you also are wondering when our next event is and you're watching this on a replay, you can always find the most updated list at professormesser.com/calendar. If there are any changes to the schedule, that's where I update them first. So if you go to that link, you're guaranteed to get the latest information. I also, at the same time, update the events channel on our Discord. So both of those are great places to go when you are looking for something to know when the next event is going to be. ProfessorMesser.com/calendar or the events channel on our Discord, both great places to go to know exactly when that will happen. Well, although we're done with me asking you questions, we're not done yet. We've got our after show coming up where you can ask me questions by visiting that same URL that we looked at earlier, ProfessorMesser.com/QA, and that will tell you everything you need to be able to answer or submit questions, either one of those. There's a link at the top, a tab at the top of the screen where you can choose all of that. If you like our Network Plus course notes and want to learn more about the entire bundle, you can find out more at ProfessorMesser.com/netsuccess. Don't forget about our discounted vouchers if you're in the U.S., Canada, or a U.S. territory. Now with retake options, you can find them all at ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. And we have a lot more here. If we're on anywhere on the internet you would like to find us, type in ProfessorMesser.com/ the name of the place you would like to find us at. So /Discord, /YouTube, /X, /Twitter, /Instagram, /LinkedIn, /Facebook, whatever it happens to be, you should find us there. And if we're not there, tell us. We'll set up shop over there. Wherever you happen to be is where we want to be. That's a good place to focus if you're trying to find where you happen to be and you'd like to get the daily pop quiz question or weekly pop quiz question. I'll be glad to add them to that list as well. Well, thank you so much for being here in this first hour. Stick around. In just a few seconds, we will start our after show. Stay right where you are. We will pick it up from right there. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. Okay. Yep, we're on LinkedIn. You go to ProfessorMesser.com/LinkedIn. We'll certainly be able to give you that as well. Okay. Let me hydrate up a little bit. Let's get rid of this right here. There we go. Hi, everybody. It's time for the after show. The after show is the part of the show where I do very little work, at least initially. This first hour is one where I have to write brand new questions and answers and put them in the slides and put them on the configuration online so you can answer the question. There's a whole lot of work that goes into that. It's a lot of fun to do. But this second hour is one where I don't do any of that. You're now going to ask me questions. And the way that you submit a question is using the link that you see on your screen. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. There is a link there. I'm going to hide this information on the screen so we can see in my Q&A. In fact, I should put a little announcement up here. There we go. So you can see that you can submit questions for this second hour at any time during this session. Your contribution may not appear immediately. In fact, it won't appear immediately because I'm going to sift through these on my side to see what questions you have submitted. And then we'll just go through one by one and see if we can answer some of these questions for you. So feel free. We got a number of questions that have already been submitted. We have a lot that is in this list, that is in this particular view. So we're going to go through the questions that you have and see if there is more available on this list to sift through to see what's there and see what's available. Now, I do have a number of things. We were talking a lot in the pre-show. I wanted to tell you a story about networking that I had to go through yesterday. And the problem that I ran into was a power outage that caused me to completely reconfigure my wireless network. That isn't something that normally goes together. Power outages are sort of a fact of life. Whether you're in a corporate environment, whether you're in a home, you're going to have power outages. And a lot of the devices and systems that I run in the studio, they are run with a UPS. So you can't see it here. It's really at the bottom. See if the camera probably doesn't even go down that far. It doesn't. So just underneath some of the equipment here at the very bottom, because UPSs are just a bunch of batteries, they're heavy. So I always put them at the very bottom of the rack. So I have a 19-inch rack on the left and the right side of me. And they have a door on them. They're soundproofed. They have fans that keep them cool in there. At the very bottom is a UPS. So if the power goes out, I'm in Florida in the summer, storms come through every afternoon. you're going to have power outages. It's just sort of a fact of life when you live in this particular part of the world. So it's not a big thing. We see it all the time. We've not really had a full house studio power outage in quite some time. In fact, I don't really have any recent memory of losing every bit of power. Maybe last year during some storms. That's a long time ago. But we had our first major power outage. The whole house went out for about 2 minutes, and then everything came back on again. As it turns out, the local power company was doing some maintenance. This was something they were converting something over. They were switching something over. There was a conversion. So it turned off all the power in the house. The UPS systems kept running, but everything else in the house that was not connected to UPS, which is most electronic devices in most houses, were completely turned off. House goes quiet. You lose everything. We are all familiar with this situation. And 2 minutes later, the power turned back on. In my studio, you can't really see it in the image here, but in my studio at the very back behind me, you can't really even see it in this view, but back behind me, back there, on the ceiling, I originally had installed some these. One moment, please. I'm going to slide over here. This was so well planned out, by the way. So these are in my ceiling. This is it. Lumeri, they are the smart gimbal recessed light. Smart gimbal recessed light. What's nice about these is they're LED. They can change colors. So it was perfect. That's what I wanted to put behind me so I could give you different colors, different lighting. The problem is that my ceiling is relatively high. I think it's a 12-foot ceiling in here. And they just weren't bright enough to really give the effect that I wanted. So I ended up not using them. Now, I had them installed by some very competent electricians. You will understand my sarcasm in a moment. So when I came back in my studio after the power outage, I'd gone out, was doing some other things. Power came back on. I said, well, let me go check that the UPS is okay. Everything's fine. I came back in, and all three of those lights, which normally have been off because I've not been using them, were on. And it's at that point I realized the electricians that installed them wired them into a hot circuit that was not switched. There's no switch on the wall that turns them on and off. That I had configured them on my phone using the Lumeri app. They all have apps. And I configured it to just turn them off. Just turn them down to 0%. And there they have sat this whole time, probably just sitting there simmering. They're just on, but not really doing anything. These are lights that I initially configured. I think it boots it up into a Bluetooth mode, then converts it over, and from that point on, communicates via 802.11. So here's my networking issue that I mentioned earlier. This all comes back to a network problem. Now, I'm in my studio. These lights are on behind me, and I can't turn them off. The app is not finding the lights. That's when it occurred to me that the lights were originally put in a year ago when I had a completely different wireless network. In fact, a completely different network altogether. I had a different network design with different equipment, and I replaced everything in my network with Ubiquiti. I updated everything. I updated my gateway, my router out to the internet. So Ubiquiti router. I have Ubiquiti switches. I have Ubiquiti access points. I have Ubiquiti everything. And it's a dream. It's a wonderful platform. And it does exactly what I want it to do and then some. And it is intuitive. It is visually stunning. It is efficient. It is high powered. It's everything you want in networking technology. It certainly works perfect for this particular, probably overkill for this environment, but I've also got integrated. I now have the Ubiquiti camera system. So the cameras in my house, IP cameras, all come back to a Ubiquiti access control. And then I also have Ubiquiti NAS. So I've all of the videos that I create are stored on that central NAS. So there you go. Yeah, and it's not. People in the chat room are going, is this an advertisement? It's not. So I don't get any money from Ubiquiti to do anything. They don't even know who I am. So we're fine there. I just use them because they're interesting, they're good, they're interesting, and they're very powerful technologies. They're a lot of fun to configure. They got a nice interface, et cetera, et cetera. But here's the problem. I now can't talk to those lights. My phone can't talk to the lights. And I don't remember what the wireless network was when I set up the system. Oh boy. So now I also don't have a way to climb up into the attic and physically disconnect the lights, because I did not, when I moved into this house, I didn't bring my ladder with me. And I have been intentionally not buying a ladder because Mrs. Professor Messer does not want me on a ladder. There's a lot of reasons for this, many of them very good. You will never find me telling you that I had an accident falling off a ladder because I'm not allowed on a ladder. That's effectively what that is. There's a whole other story there, and we can talk about it at some other time. But I don't have a ladder, so I have no way to get into my attic. I got to fix that, granted. So I can't unplug them, and now the lights are on. And I'm thinking, I have a live stream tomorrow. I have you that are going to be watching this. I can't have lights messing up the background. What am I going to do? So one of the things I thought was that they must be communicating via 802.11. I downloaded the manual. I'm looking at it. Yep, that's the case. I confirmed. They're trying to communicate via 802.11. I'm on a different 802.11 network now that I reconfigured with the new Ubiquity stuff. Therefore, it's talking on the old network, which no longer exists. What do we do? Now I need the old SSID. I don't remember it. I need the old password. I don't remember it. I don't. It was a year ago, and I completely redid everything. That piece of information I threw out of my brain because I did not need to reference it anymore. Fortunately, in Mac OS, there is, in fact, let me see if I can bring it up. In Mac OS, there's a feature, which is a fantastic feature, that if you have a mobile phone and you bring it onto a network where it's never been before, but you do have your Mac device on this network. My Mac Studio, for example, is on this network. It's on the wireless network. When you bring up your phone, they'll talk to each other and they will say, hey, you're on a new network. It's a trusted device. Do you want to just send the password over to the phone and have it automatically connect to the wireless? And it does it. And because you've authenticated on both of those devices, it knows it's you. It's very secure in the process of doing that. And I thought, well, that means that SSID and the password is stored on my computer somewhere. So I'm going to see if I can show some of these. I think I can. I think I can show some of these. Some of these gives way too much away about me and my world. But if you were to look at, I think I can show some of this. Every time you connect to a network, it stores this information on your computer. And on my computer, let's bring up, this is just some of the wireless networks that have been stored on my network, just so you're aware. Now, the one that I currently run on my network is called Figment. That's the name of my current wireless network. But the wireless network, I finally found it. The wireless network that I was on previously, I looked at it, I go, oh, that's it. That's the name of my old network, which I did not configure. The people who installed the network did. And they configured it with a name I was not happy with, Messer Home. So if anybody ever sees that SSID, you're like, oh, that's Messer's Home. I use other terms like Token Ring. That's my network. Nobody's running Token Ring anywhere. It's a perfect network to use. But since we're in Orlando, my wireless network is called Figment. And I have a number of other network devices. They're all sort of configured in a similar vein. Now, what I'm not going to show you is under Messer Home. If you were to hit the three dots at the end, it gives you an option to auto join that network, remove that from the list, or copy the password. It's in the operating system. And indeed, if you copy the password, you can paste it into a text editor and it shows you the password of the SSID of that wireless network. And I saw the password. I'm like, that's right. That was the password we used on that network. And so finally, I had everything I needed to recreate the communication to those devices. So I got onto my access points. I added, in my access points, I can add additional SSIDs. I added a new SSID called Messer Home. I set it up with the old password that I had copied from my configuration. And I then connected my phone to that Messer Home SSID. And then it was able to see the lights. I was able to turn them off and set them to a default to always turn off in case it loses power and then comes back on again. So that was my story about having a power outage and having to completely reconfigure my wireless network because I had a power outage, just so I could turn some lights off. So sometimes this data sticks around. It's around longer than you might expect. And that was a really good example of how that might expect. So people in the chat room were saying, some of them go into a join mode if you power cycle it 5 times. These do as well. I think they all use the same chipset, I think is really what happens. So these do as well. But what I didn't want to do in my studio was go to my breaker box and power off everything on my circuit 5 times. I didn't want to do that. I would probably shut down my desk. One of the things that I have configured since I am in Florida is this whole configuration you see here all goes to a single outlet in the wall. It's one of the benefits of running LEDs is that you're really not using a lot of amps. So even though I have a mixer, I have a video switcher, I have controllers, I have laptops, I have desktops, I have monitors, still well under. This is a 20 amp circuit, but well under the 20 amps. Well, I could have done a 15 amp and I still would have been fine for this circuit, probably 50% of that. So I could have unplugged everything and then gone and done the 5. That would have been my second choice. That would have been a good alternative, and that was my backup. But I ended up not doing that. We connected. I could do it all from my desk. I created the wireless network. I connected. I turned it off. I deleted the wireless network, and we're finally back to where we were. So there we go. That is exactly how those work. People in the chat, enjoy the story, I hope. That's something that we did have to go through, and it was an example of how I turned lights off by reconfiguring a wireless network. But the thing that we have here is that all of the lights, you can't really see the lights, but there are lights there. If you look at my hand, you can kind of see the lights are on the outside of my arm here. That's because I do have lights that are right on me, but I definitely have no lights in the back. That's by design. So that is what we are using for all of those. Those lights are directly on me. That's not a green screen. That's a real screen back here. This is real. See, my arm's turning yellow. My arm's turning purple. So those lights are still there. There's the purple light. Those are real lights. That's a real background. So in fact, that's one of the things I did not want to have to deal with is green screens in the studio. So that's why we have that there. Now after that story, I did want to give you a little story how, since it was networking, that fit into that. That's how it was. People are asking about the old studio. The old studio is at the old house, which this new studio does not have a fireplace because I thought I'm in Central Florida. And indeed, I think over the last year, I probably could have used a fireplace once or twice. It would have been a waste of time, but at least we have that there. I did want a physical background, though. They're so much easier to manage. Couple lights, physical background, no green screen. Perfect. That's what you want. That is exactly what you want. So let's go back to questions that you have submitted. Let's keep going through our list that we have here and see what options are available on this list. So people on the chat, I did get a question that came in about wanting a Network Plus book or finding additional tools for Network Plus. So let me quickly take you through the things that are available currently on my site for Network Plus. If you go to the Network Plus menu that is on my site, I have an option for Start Here. It's right at the top once we get through the Google ads. The Start Here page provides information on where the videos happen to be, how you join one of these study groups, where the Discord happens to be, the weekly pop quiz questions, and then other things like my success bundle, my course notes, and additional details. So if you're looking for a book for Network Plus, I have the official CompTIA book that is available here. You can learn about the student guide there. We've also got CertMaster Learn, CertMaster Practice. We're going to be adding some other Network Plus resources in here, but all of those are available on my site under the Network Plus menu where it says Start Here. That's where you want to go. That's where all of that is listed for those of you that are looking there. And of course, we have our course notes there. There's options for all of that. They're all listed in that mix. Let's look through some other questions that you have submitted. If you'd like to submit a question for this after show, you can do that using the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and the tabs at the top of the screen. So let's see other questions you have. This is an interesting one, and I think this might be worth going through. This is from Noel, who asks, good afternoon, Professor. Recently passed my Network Plus. Congratulations on your new Network Plus certification, Noel. Noel says, I really appreciate the work you and your team has done to make this content available. What do you think is the most appropriate way to advertise a certification? Is it a line in a resume sufficient? Well, I guess that sort of depends on what you want the certification to do for you. And this is kind of a question you really should ask prior to taking the exam, prior to even studying for this exam, is you need to think about, why are you doing this? Why are you getting the certification? It seems like a simple question. Seems like an obvious question, but so often we get so wrapped up in chasing the certification, we almost forget why we're chasing the certification. We've all been there. We've all had to work through that. So this is my recommendation for you to take a step back, turn the mirror on yourself a little bit, and think about, why am I getting this cert? What am I going to do with this certification? What is the point for going through this process? For most of us, we're trying to get a job. We're trying to get a better job, trying to move up. That's, I think, the vast majority of people that are getting a certification. That's what you're doing. And in fact, for the rest of your IT career, you will be getting a certification or another every year or so. We just do this constantly. It is something we are always trying to improve ourselves. We're always trying to move up. And so you will find yourself studying other certifications as you go throughout your career. But as far as the Network Plus is concerned, we kind of have to look at why we went after this cert. I would hope in this particular case that Noel had a look at the jobs that were in his particular geography or places where he wanted to live. He found some entry level or first, maybe second level jobs that had something to do with technology that interested Noel. And at this point, he saw in those job descriptions that people were asking about network knowledge. They were either specifically asking for a Network Plus certification, maybe a network certification from some other provider, or they were asking about networking technology in general. Now, when you have that scenario, that is a perfect lead-in to getting a Network Plus certification. Of course, that's the certification you would get. They, in so many ways, either specifically asked for the Network Plus cert, or they asked for skills that were right in line with what Network Plus provides. So that's a very good use of your time. So we're going to assume in this case, and hopefully in your case as well, that that was the reason for getting the Network Plus certification to begin with. So let's go back to the question where he says, okay, what do you think is the most appropriate way to advertise? Is a line in a resume sufficient? And it may or it may not be sufficient depending on what you'd like to do with this. Everything you do, everything you are working on, everything that you are building to create your career and your knowledge, your foundational knowledge in IT is going to be based on things that you're learning over time, whether it's with the certification, whether it's a on-the-job training. When the network breaks, that's when you really start to learn things. When things are running fine, not really a great learning environment. When things are broken, you tend to learn very quickly. So in this case, of course, it's going to go on your resume, but is that sufficient? And by the tone or the way it was asked, I have a feeling Noel believes perhaps it's not as efficient or not as sufficient as it could be. And you're probably right. There are ways that you can market with this. Everything you do in your career needs to have some level of marketing associated with it, and you should promote yourself when you do something like this. Don't just throw away these things that you do. Well, of course I passed the Network Plus. Of course I did that. But other people, especially me, I'm impressed when people pass a certification. I want to know that they have gone through that process, that they tackled it, that they were successful, and now they earn the cert. So of course you're going to put it on your resume. Most of the time these days, your resumes are being read by an automated process that are looking for keywords, and they are creating a score based on the information that's on your resume. We're not going to get into that level of detail with this particular answer, at least not at the moment. But a line on a resume saying Network Plus certification and the number or the name or the date is sufficient for the resume, because they'll tag it. They'll see, oh, he's got Network Plus certification. You get 5 points. 5 points to Gryffindor for your Network Plus certification. And then it counts them up, and it figures out if you have enough points to continue on to the next phase. The other thing you can do, though, is tell other people. A lot of people, a lot of hiring managers, a lot of recruiters, a lot of people of interest are looking around LinkedIn to try to find someone who might fit for an open position. And if you have marketed yourself, why would you not create a post on LinkedIn that says, I passed my Network Plus certification last week. Here are the resources I used. Here is a picture of the certification. Here's my picture on the screen. Here, I really did it. I am officially Network Plus certified. In fact, you might even want to add on the Credly links on your LinkedIn so that other people can see that associated with your profile. People search for those on LinkedIn. So it's a very good way to market yourself. That's why I often tell you, make sure you've got a good LinkedIn. Make sure you build it out, that you're there, that you're indexable. Even if you don't know anybody, that's fine. You know, one of the things about LinkedIn, it becomes very useful once you've worked with people. But if you don't have your first job in IT yet, and you don't have a very big network, but that's okay because other people can search for you and find you. But there needs to be something to search for. So start promoting yourself. If you build out a home lab, write an article about it, put it on LinkedIn. If you earn a certification, talk all about it in a posting that you put on LinkedIn. These are things that are useful for people who are doing hiring. And if you are in a position where you finally get an interview, they're probably going to want to go back and look at your social media anyway, because companies are inherently nosy for good reasons and for bad. So they're going to want to see your LinkedIn, and they'll find your LinkedIn with all of these things there and go, yeah, we need to hire that person. Look at all the things they've done. So it can be a very useful tool, not just on LinkedIn, but other places as well. LinkedIn just seems to be the one that the industry that all of us have sort of have gotten to. So although a line on a resume is sufficient for job postings, for submitting your resume the first time, don't forget to talk all about it in your cover letter. Don't forget to talk all about it on LinkedIn. Talk about it on Facebook. Talk about it everywhere. Use that to your advantage, especially if you got that certification so that you could get a job or get a better job. That may be something to consider as well. Hopefully that gives you a place to go, or at least an idea of other things you might be able to do with something that you passed the certification, you thought you were done. No, just getting started. Now that we've leveled up, now we go into the second part where we start marketing that. So that's an important part of this too. More questions. Let's keep going through this list that we have here. One moment, please. While I put up more information on my screen. I get such great questions, by the way. Here's a question that I get all the time, just only from people in my family. And this is probably Uncle, hey Uncle, who has submitted this as anonymous, who says, why do you do this? Now, I don't know if they mean, why am I suffering through this process? Or if they mean, why do you continually, every month, come back and do these live streams? Both of these questions, I think, are just as offensive. I don't know that there's a real good answer to any of these either. I don't know. I don't know why I do this. Well, originally we created this crazy experiment that is sort of broken out of the lab and become its own entity. We did it because there just wasn't enough training on the internet. And in many cases, we're still there. Now, we started this process nearly 20 years ago. My YouTube channel just turned 18, just so you get a perspective of how long, not only why do I do this, the question is, why am I still doing this? Really, I think that's what that is. So 18 years in YouTube, and we were already publishing videos well before that. On our original platform, I chose the winner at the very beginning, and we were publishing our videos on blip.io. Where is that blip.io these days? No longer exists. The domain goes to a page that says blip.io is not here anymore, effectively. But we got 1 million views on blip.io. And then this thing came along. Google bought this company called YouTube. And everybody said, YouTube, that's a funny name. Let's go over there. And everybody went there. And so we did too. And I'm so glad we did, because that really became, it was a watershed moment for this thing that we wanted to do, which was make this technical information more available to the world. And to be able to do that, we needed to be where the world was. And in fact, they all showed up on YouTube. I don't know how we managed to make that happen, how we all decided that's where we would go, but it is where we went. And it worked out very nicely, because that's when everything really took off. So we were able to get all of this training information, how to fix things, how to troubleshoot, how to get a job. It sort of evolved from my family members take their computer to a big box store and they can't fix it. And they ask me, why can't they fix it? And I said, I don't know. There's so much information on the internet. And then I looked around and I thought, there really isn't so much information on the internet. So this is what has brought us to where we are today. So kind of a throwaway from Anonymous there, but actually a very interesting question about why do we do this? What is this thing that drives us? And currently where this has evolved to for us is, how do we get you your first job in IT? The IT industry has been exceptionally good to me. I started right out of college, got into an IT position, and moved up through the ranks. It was a field service technician, moved up into corporate help desk, moved up into server administration, moved up into network administration, moved into supporting as a systems engineer larger corporations, and they're supporting their products like Network General, Network Associates, Palo Alto Networks, and moved up into cybersecurity. So I came from someone who had a degree in business management and moved into the ranks of IT and saw that the world was open to me. If you simply apply yourself and learn about these technologies, the sky is the limit. And I thought, if it's so enabling to have that level of flexibility in what you do in your career. It's very unusual. In fact, if you're in medicine, you don't have that level of flexibility. You study for 6 years to learn about the hand, to learn about the heart, to learn about the foot. And that's what you do for the rest of your career. But in IT, you just do whatever you'd like. You learn about a network. Okay, let's work on a network a little bit. This security thing is interesting. Let's go do a security thing a little bit. And so you can shift around and really expand and move up and level up and become more knowledgeable in this world of technology. And I thought, if I can give someone else that same encouragement, and I can give them the tools they need to get that first job in IT, we're effectively pushing them out of the nest into a world where they can pretty much fly anywhere. And that's really the goal. That's what drives us every day to keep this whole thing going. That's when I wake up in the morning, we're doing this. Right now, we're in, very conservatively 12-hour days. I've been doing 12-hour days, 7 days a week for a number of months now, because we have a course that's out. So I'm doing 80-hour plus weeks. You have to have some reason to go through that. Why would you put yourself through something like that? And it's that driving idea that we can make this process easier. We can give people the tools they need. We can make their life better. We can make their family's life better. There's a lot riding on that. And that's drive enough for me. So the person who submitted the question probably threw it in as a what's wrong with you kind of question. Valid, certainly, but there's a bigger picture there. of the things that we're working on. So that's just a little bit of inside baseball. I'm not even sure if it's interesting, but you're kind of stuck here on the stream with me. So there we are. More questions. Let's keep going through this list. This is a good one because this came up earlier this week. Somebody brought this up to me. Royan asks, if I go to the right camera feed with me on it, there we go. And it says, are there updated YouTube videos on the new A+, or the old videos pretty much the same? Now, this applies to Network Plus, Security Plus, or any of the other training courses we do as well. Every time, well, first let's back up a little bit. Let me give you a feel for how this changes. The industry in general updates exam objectives on a regular schedule. With CompTIA, they update these exam objectives about every 3 years. Cisco has a similar cycle. Microsoft works a little bit differently because Microsoft's certifications tend to be focused on a product and a product version. And so that certification is good for the duration of that product version. But then they're releasing new versions of Windows. They're releasing new versions of server. They're releasing new things in the cloud. They have a new certification when that happens. So basically the same thing. So every 3 years for us, since most of what we do is CompTIA, every 3 years we will create a new A+ course. Or in the fact of A+, it's 2 courses. Every 3 years, we create a new Network Plus course. Every 3 years, we create a new Security Plus course. And we create the course from scratch, although obviously a lot of the content of these courses remains the same. For example, IP version 4 is the same IP version 4 today that it was 20 years ago. So you don't have to recreate IP version 4 every 3 years. You have the same IPv4 content. But things do change every 3 years or so. The exams tend to change 20 to 30%. So we are updating content. We're tweaking old content. We're adding new information in. We're revising some of the terms we use based on your feedback. You'll tell us, I'd like more clarification on this. I wish this had more information on it. I wish there was a demo associated with that. We'll add that in the next rev. So it gives me a chance to even make it better the next time. Plus, technology changes. And for example, I have a new camera that I didn't have last year. This camera is better. I have new audio that I didn't have last year. This audio is better. So we are updating and making the courses visually better. We're making the quality of the courses better. The content of the courses is better. There's always a need to update and make these videos better every time. So a lot of the content is very similar between versions because the technology doesn't change that much between versions, but a lot of content is gone. A lot of content has been added, and we integrate that in with the new course. So whenever you're studying and you're thinking, well, there's an updated A+ course, we've got updated A+ videos for you. But if you're studying for the new exam, do not go study from older videos. Always check the version number of the videos. For example, for the current Network Plus is called the N10-009. That is you look at our course notes, it's written right on the front, N10-009. These are the course notes for this current version of the Network Plus exam. Now, if you had a set of course notes from 6 years ago, this might say N10-007. And you might be thinking, well, why don't I just use the 007 notes to study for the 009 exam? There can't be that much that's different. IP hasn't changed since the 007. So you may think you can use those. But in reality, about 40% of the exam content is brand new in the 009 as compared to the 007. So 40% of what's going to be on your exam is missing in your old book. You're going to fail. That's too much. There's no way you're going to have that content available, and you're going to end up not getting enough points to be able to pass the exam. So always study from materials that match the version of the exam that you plan to take, because as I mentioned earlier, CompTIA sticks to these exam objectives like a bear and honey. It is bullet by bullet by bullet exactly what you will expect to see on the exam. They don't go outside the scope of these exam objectives. This makes it exceptionally easy to study, by the way. There's no question that you're studying the right thing. There's no question when you see something that's outside the scope and you're thinking, why are they asking me about that? Because it's an out-of-scope question. You can throw it away. Stick to this list. Stick to those bullets, and you're going to be fine. So that's my recommendation to you when it comes to older versions, newer versions. Check the version content. Check the version number on your book. Check the version number on your videos. Check the version number in your labs. Check the version number on your Q&A. Make sure they all match the version number of the exam you plan to take, and you will be fine. Let's keep going through this list. More questions. There's a lot in here about this. People want to know why I don't have a ladder. That's a very good question. And it's just too much of a story for this time. We will have to table our ladder story and figure out the details. It's actually kind of a boring question. A boring answer is that I moved houses and I didn't bring my ladder, so I don't have a ladder. That's the story. There's a lot more to it than that. One of the things that is associated with when you have a company, when you run a business, when there's other things that you're doing, is other people rely on you. There is a responsibility you have for the people that work for you, for your family. And in this particular case, this business is one that supports my entire family. So Mrs. Professor Messer, although she is a trained professional, a licensed trained professional in the things that she does, and she's exceptionally good at it, and she's much smarter than I am, she doesn't have that job anymore. She supports this. She is the vice president of this company. So she's doing these things. So she doesn't let me on a ladder. That's what that's about. I cannot jump out of a plane with a parachute. Not allowed. I'm not allowed to, anything that's flying. Like, I've always wanted to get on some type of something that I could fly along with, maybe a flying suit. Have you seen those? They look amazing. Anything that's climbing up a mountain, can't do it. So anything that involves risk I'm not allowed to do. I'm barely allowed to drive a car, just so you're aware. So she doesn't allow me to have I'm not allowed on a ladder, therefore I can't buy a ladder. There you go. That's the story. Now, the requirement, of course, now, as I explained to her, I need a ladder in case this happens again, in case something happens again. So that's one of those scenarios. It's not as ridiculously hard as it sounds when I put the comments out there, because I really do need to get a ladder just so I have one I can get those lights. And now I need to unplug those lights. So I'm going to go up in the attic anyway. So the next time you see me, there'll probably be a hole where I step through the ceiling on the ladder. So these problems always occur because I'm going up and doing something like that. And I am, as Mrs. Professor Messer knows, I am genetically clumsy. I'm maybe not genetically, but it might as well be. I am inherently clumsy. If you give me a piece of glass to hold, it is just a matter of time before that is in many, many pieces on the floor. I'm not capable of keeping things in one place. I'm hitting things. I'm knocked into something. I don't know why, but she knows I'm not the person to go up on a ladder. That's the story. It's such a sort of boring story. And now that we've said it, isn't it? It's kind of a sad story, but it's more about risk avoidance is what that is. So I fit Security Plus into that somehow. That's exactly what it is. And she wants me to take that risk and have risk transference, transfer the risk to someone else who will come in and get on their ladder and go into the attic. So she wants me to pay for someone else to come and go into the attic and unplug the lights. Here's the problem. She's absolutely correct. I say it's a problem. It's one of those things. If you're lucky like me and you marry up and they're smarter than you are, they're going to be right 99.999% of the time. And that's a very good example of how they are right and having that there. There were some questions in here about the 1 hour credit. We did do it in that first hour. So wait till the replay. You'll have to go back through again. I did give you the CEU codes and the whole thing. We did go through it. You might have stepped away. It might have zoned out. but we did go through that. So that was another question that was submitted on this list. Let's keep going through our list. Other questions that came up. Oh, this should be good. This is something I do see more and more of in people's networks, and I'd like to get your feedback, chat room, on this one. This from Musa asks, my fiber provider has restricted access to the Wi-Fi admin dashboard, so I'm unable to change the SSID or the password of my wireless network. What's the networking policy or term that describes this type of provider-imposed limitation on admin settings? Well, in the industry, we refer to this technically as stupidity. We refer to this as dumbness. We refer to this as, what were we thinking? This is an unusual restriction. It's not one I've seen before from a provider. I've seen this, of course, in environments where you're living in a large, maybe an apartment building. I've seen this before, of course. They will assign a centralized access point for everybody to use, but I've never seen a personal private access point that was locked down so that you could not change the security settings, which, by the way, is a remarkable and egregious security lapse. That is not just a non-best practice. That is an insecure and frighteningly insecure practice to have this. So it sounds like you have to contact the ISP directly for them to change the SSID, for them to change the password. I think that's a step too far for me. I think that is one where we would have to find a way not to use their network in that scenario. I would hope that, like many ISPs, you have the option to disable their wireless technology, put their modem into what they call a bridge mode, and maybe connect your own access point where you have control. That might be the way to do it. I certainly understand from a novice perspective that this makes it more supportable. Well, sure it does. But now it makes it completely open if someone else knows your password. Now, granted, it might be that everybody has a different password and the only people that know your password is your ISP, and they're not coming over to your house, so it's okay. There is some validity there, and certainly that makes it not as insecure as one would hope. But the fact that you can't change it seems a little odd, doesn't it? It just seems relatively ridiculous. There was some options on my previous ISP that allowed you to log in. This was Comcast. That allowed you to log into your Comcast web console front end to your account on the Comcast website, and you could manage aspects of your wireless device from your account setup on the web. But you were in control of that. You were able to change it, and you were able to set the passwords, and you were able to do all of those. Because, by the way, the ISP can get into your system anyway. They have access through their network, regardless of the authentication that you set up on the modem. So that's an unusual situation. So if you have a bridge mode, a pass-through mode, a non-router mode, a switch mode, that's an option. You could put your own access point there. If they don't have that, then I guess that's your option. I guess that's all you have. Your policy is one that is restricted by whatever they are doing. I guess it's time for a new ISP. But that's sort of a ridiculous statement, isn't it? You don't always have the ability to move to a different ISP. I don't. My current ISP gives me 2 gig up and 2 gig down over fiber direct to my house. And they are upgrading that this year to 10. Yes, I am. So when that happens, I have control over all of this. I have my own router in place, my own wireless access points. I control everything associated with that connection. If I wanted to go to a different ISP, I'm not even sure where I would go. I guess I am in the sort of a larger city type area. So 5G might be an option, a 5G modem, depending on how close I am to 5G. I'm not sure. That's something I have been considering as a backup connection. There's not a lot of good wireless 5G wireless rack mountable modems available quite yet. So I've got to think about how I want to set up the 5G. Starlink, there's another option in the US and other places around the world. But again, there are limitations to that, certainly, for a speed perspective. It's not a great option. So the ISP I have now is the one I want. I couldn't imagine if they had not, if they restricted this and didn't allow you to do very much with it, wouldn't let you change the SSID, wouldn't allow you to change the password. That would be a deal breaker. I would have already hacked into it. I know I would have. I would have already found a way into the system, changed it, and just hoped for the best. They would have probably found out later. And once you do a firmware upgrade, it probably resets everything back anyway. But that is an unusual scenario. I would think most ISPs these days are using equipment that doesn't have that level of restriction because it has a way for them to get in through the DOCSIS or whatever method they're using on their side. And therefore, they don't care what you set it up to. They still have the access to it. That is, by the way, a similar thing with my current ISP. They have no access to any of the equipment here. They can barely get into their ONT, the optical network terminal that connects the fiber network to my copper network. They can't even do a lot of troubleshooting from their box. So maybe that's one of those that simplifies the support process. Very frustrating, though. I would not, like this Toss in the chat room says, your main fiber provider up here, I think you're in Canada, right? Locks the first 2 octets to 192.168, which is not even the standard. That doesn't even comply with the RFC. You've got a lot of other public IP addresses that you could choose from this. I would imagine that's a pain. I ran into this similar situation. I was configuring way back in the day. There was I think it was a Nintendo portable device. I forget which one. And I tried to set up the IP addresses to a 10 dot network that I was running. It had no idea what I was talking about. It had to be a 192.168.1 dot something. That it just could not handle. What I think it was, it couldn't handle the 10 dot network with a 24-bit subnet. It just couldn't do it. So maybe I was actually setting it up. Maybe it was a 10 dot network with a 16-bit. That I was using because I was just trying different things. That was the network I was using at the time. But it was a good example. And it really taught me that these consumer products are not really designed to provide a lot of different flexibility in networking. I'll give you another example of one. So I have a Netgear, big box router. You go to Best Buy, you buy a router. It's a Netgear. I plugged it into my network. And I wanted to have a separate network behind it that I would NAT through. No, I would route through. It wasn't NATing. I would route through. So I had a 192.168 network. I connected it to a different router. And on that different router, I had a 10 dot network on the other side. And then I would communicate through my network. I wanted to route and have a static route to go through the 192.168 to the 10 dot network. On any other router, in any other configuration, with any standard enterprise router, that's a normal route that you would add into the routing table. And so on the Netgears, they have that option. You can add additional routes into the routing table. So I added the 10 dot network. And then I would send the traffic in, and it wouldn't route it there. Think, well, I'm plugged right into the back of the Netgear. Why is it not routing it to the 10 dot network? So I contacted the Netgear. I think it was Netgear. I don't want to talk badly, but it was Netgear Linksys. It was one of those Soho type routers. And opened a ticket online. They sent a note back going, yeah, we don't route. We don't do that. You can't do it. We won't do it. And it won't work. And it will never work. And it's not a bug. It's intentional. It is working as designed. Even though there is a spot there for a static route, they will not static route. They do not route through their box to another network. It's not in the code. It won't do it ever. And that was a kind of a surprise to me at the time. I thought, well, router's a router, right? Static route's a static route. It takes it. It's in the config. Nope. Just because there's a screen with options doesn't mean it does that. These are the things you learn in the industry as we go through these. So maybe the systems, maybe the routers that your ISP is using are one of those types of routers that it just does this. Do not ask it to do that. It does this. It does apples. Apple, apple, apple. Don't ask it to do banana. Don't ask it to be a strawberry. It is an apple. This is green. Don't ask it to be red. Don't ask it to be yellow. Don't ask it to be purple. It's green. So that's probably a very good example of why they don't want to change anything, because maybe they can't. It may just be in the firmware of that device. Let's keep going through this list. I'm past the top of the hour. We can fit another question in, though. We've got more in here. The voice is still there, just a little bit. We're going to keep going through this. More. We've got lots of great questions that are being sent in. Thank you for sending them. We've got folks that are adding more and more into this list. Thank you for doing that. Got lots there. Other questions. A lot of people are asking about plans, future things to add to the list, things that should be included on the website. And a lot of people want to know what our next course will be. And that is indeed a very good question. What is the next course that we are working on? It's always a challenge, of course, to find exactly what we want to do next. But I'll give you an idea behind it as we are working through the details of this. Whenever we're looking at creating a course, it's always based on a couple of things. As I mentioned, the big goal for what we do is to create courses that give people opportunity, that give them options, that add to the foundational knowledge they need to get that first job in IT or get that next job in IT. So already there is a very finite group of certifications that makes that up, but there's plenty out there. Of course, we do the A+ Network Plus Security Plus. There are other CompTIA certifications around that. So you could have the CISA Plus, the CASP. Maybe you go to the Data Plus. Maybe there's additional higher in networking things that we work on. Maybe it's a Cisco, a CCNA would be fun. I think that would be a good one to do. There's plenty of cloud-based courses that would be tremendous to add to our offerings. A Linux course would be a lot of fun. So there's a lot of things that I use day to day that are right in my wheelhouse, or there's a knowledge that I have built through the years working in this industry, things that I've done hands-on, I've implemented, I've been on the network, we've troubleshooted with it, we've been in that environment. For example, Wireshark, I think it was last week before, introduced their new certification, brand new certification for Wireshark. That's all me. I work at the packet level. I'm that person. So that would be a fun one. So I think there's lots of opportunity, and there's lots of places to go with this. Someone once told me that the sign that you have a good plan, that you've built the right thing, is that you now have more work to do than you are ever capable of doing. So I would say we're very successful, because there's no way I can create 10 more courses to go on our website, at least not in its current plan. Scalability is always something to consider. So we might want to do something along those lines. The challenge from a business perspective is, how do you scale and still maintain quality? Because I think that's a big part of what we do. That's what we strive for, is to give you training that is better than anything you could buy. That's better than anything you could find anywhere else. Even though it's a free video course, it should have the same quality, the same Q&A, the same knowledge base, the same information as something that you would buy from a different third party. And I think that's an important consideration. So I would rather have fewer courses that were better than more courses that were just good enough. There's plenty of stuff that's just good enough. I don't want to give you another one of those. You can go anywhere and get something that's just good enough. But where do you get something that is been tried, tested, verified, and put through its paces by someone who's already done it, by someone who's been in the field, by somebody who's worked with these technologies, by somebody who's had to spend the late nights, the overnights, the implementations, the planning, the projects? That's what I want to bring to the internet. That's what I want to bring to you, because I think that's what gives you the most value. I think that's what has the highest quality. And unless I can do that, we're not going to do it. So it's a constant balancing act. I don't know what's next. I don't know where this will take us. I don't know. I don't really have that plan. I don't know what happens 5 years from now. Who knows? We'll figure that part out when we get there. But I think it is important to keep in mind how we can continue to make it better. And I believe we are. There are things happening this year that will continue to make it better. There's new videos we're releasing even just this week that I feel are some of the best videos that we've ever created. Not only in the technologies we're using, the quality of the video, the quality of the audio, but also in how we're providing the information. What type of things do we demonstrate? What type of things do we lecture on? And how much of that do we do? It is a constant evaluation and analysis for us to understand how to build that next course. And we're going to keep doing that. We're going to make sure that you get the information you need and that you want to be able to make that happen. So if you're somebody who's working through trying to understand what the next phase in your career is going to be, well, it may start with these, but it may move on to something else. And we may not have courses for what that something else will be, but it will be this way through your entire career. You will not stop with just these A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. This process will continue. There will never be a time in your career when you stop learning. There will always be something new. And as we sit here today, 5 years from now, there will be another set of technologies that no one has ever heard before. And by the way, this is where you should focus. If you want to move up in IT as quickly as possible and learn as much as you can as quickly as possible, find that emerging technology. Find the thing that is becoming popular. For example, before we had virtual machines, when VMs suddenly hit the IT world, it was embraced. We suddenly had this new set of technologies. We needed to embrace it and figure it out. Then we moved to cloud. Now AI is going full steam along with data. What's the next going to be? What happens after this? If you can get in at the beginning of this, and we really are at the beginning of this with both data and AI, that's a great place to be, because now we can be experts in the field, because prior to this, there were none. You by default become an expert in the field. All you have to do is apply yourself. Find the technology, focus on that technology, apply yourself to that technology, and you now will move up along with that technology as it grows in the industry. You don't have to do that the rest of your career. In fact, you are not going to do that the rest of your career. Whatever you're doing today, 5 years from now, you may find yourself doing something completely different. As I mentioned, I started as a field service technician, moved into IT help desk, and then moved into workstation configurations and management, server administration, networking, and cybersecurity. That didn't happen in a year. That happened in 10 years. That happened in 15 years. So give yourself the time, trust in the process, trust that the industry that you have built all of this on will continue to be there, because it will. As much as people will, I see the naysayers telling us that AI is going to, all the jobs are going away because of AI. How's that working for you, by the way? Anybody seen AI really doing anything impressive in our world? No. Just as we suspected. It can make pretty pictures. We got pretty pictures for AI. That doesn't take your job away. So there's some great things that we can use in that tool, but it's not here to replace us. I think back to when iPads came out. So I got my iPad. So when the iPad came out, everybody immediately said, oh, well, there goes that A+ course. What are you going to do when there's no more computers? What are you going to do when all those go away and we're all just walking around with tablets? I said at the time, that's not going to be a problem. There will still be computers. There will still be servers. There will still be workstations. There will still be laptops. Tablets are not going to take over the world. And sure enough, we're still here. We're still supporting operating systems, and we're still got the Linux and Mac OS and Windows, and we still got servers. It doesn't happen quite the way we think. If it did, we would all be in our flying cars and the robots would be at home taking care of us. But the real world doesn't quite work the way we think that it should. So we are in a fortunate position in technology that we can lead as a human down the road of creating these technologies, and we can continue to grow them, and we can continue to build our foundation to get that job or get that better job. That is where I hope you focus your efforts. It's where I hope you think about and strategize about where you want to be in your career with IT. And I'm just telling you now, trust the process, trust the industry. It is one that will take you to wherever you'd like to go, whatever you'd like to do, and wherever you'd like to go. This type of technology and IT in general can take you there. And it can give you experiences and ideas and knowledge that you would have never even considered otherwise. If it didn't, I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't be doing this. I like to say that I'm living proof that we can actually make that happen because I have been through the process. I have been through the industry. I have had that position, and it has brought me to here in front of you. If there's no better evidence than that, then I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. I can only go with what I know and what I've seen and what I've done, and I think that is the ultimate. And I want you to do the same thing. If you had the same thing in your career and your life that I have, then we are successful. We have made it happen. And it's all there. It's just ready for you to take it. It's really up to you at this point. I can give you the tools. I can give you the knowledge you need to study on. I can give you these ideas and thoughts and videos and trainings. You're the one that has to make it happen. You're the only one who can make it happen. These things that happen in the world don't just suddenly fall out of the sky and into your lap. You make them happen. So you have to put it out there. You have to learn it. You have to go through the process, and then you look for your opportunities. They're going to show up. Trust me, IT is full of opportunities. Thank you so much for joining us today. There's so much that we are looking forward to in the next week. Of course, we're putting out all of our new A+ videos. If you don't know when the next live event is going to be, hit our calendar at professormesser.com/calendar. I will tell you now as we sit here, the next scheduled event is this time next week. We have our Security Plus study group on Wednesday at noon Eastern. If that changes, I will, of course, update the calendar. When we're done here, we'll be over on our Discord. Feel free to join us there, say hello, chat with the other folks who are studying, and learn the technologies you need to get that job or get that better job. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group.